Brenda G Knight was last seen in Richmond, November of 2000. It was the week of Thanksgiving. Her remains were discovered in the Mattaponi River about 7 months later.
The person who dumped her body there was likely to have some knowledge of that location.
And she didn't deserve for her body just to be thrown away like it's trash. I am the daughter of Brenda Michelle G Knight. She was well known, she was a good person. That hurts a lot to know that my mom wasn't there for the birth of any of my kids. Graduating from high school, you name it, all the big accomplishments that I did, she wasn't there. She's not forgotten. I'm gonna figure it out. I figured out who she was when she was a Jane Doe, and I'm gonna figure out who killed her.
Brenda G Knight, missing November of 2000. It was the week of Thanksgiving. We actually stumbled upon this case while working on the Keisha Jacobs missing person case.
This is my grandmama's house, and this is the house that I was born and raised up in.
Brenda's sister approached us and asked us to reopen the case on Brenda G.
Me and my sister were only like 4 years apart. We, as siblings, we always argued, but we always had each other back.
Brenda G, at the time of her disappearance, was 34 years old. She was a mother of 3 children. She did hair, and she was very popular in the community. She was well known.
Wonderful with hair. I mean, she traveled, she's been in hair shows. She's won like 3rd place, 13 places. I mean, she's been all over London and stuff. And, you know, at times people do go through things in their life that changes their course, and that will happen with my sister.
The last day that she was seen, she was dropped off by her sister on Jefferson Davis Highway. She's supposed to have been going to a friend's house.
She was found 7 months later, her remains entangled in debris in the Mattaponi River. Diamond did get the ball rolling in this investigation. She did not sit around waiting for answers.
This is the first flyer that I printed off of my mom when I was searching for her. The end of 2011, beginning of 2012.
She went to the state police, she offered up her DNA, and that eventually is how they got the hit for her mom's bones, is that her mom's bones had been found 7 months after she disappeared, but no one knew who she was. For over a decade, Brenda G was known as the Mattaponi River Lady. So they had to send those bones to the Smithsonian, to other places up in DC, the FBI facility in DC.
And there were some issues with that. Of course, we didn't know, so they were sent to the Smithsonian, and the date range they gave was about 5 years, as they believed the bones had been in the water. So when the press releases were done, initially, it said, you know, they've been missing about 5 years, and Diamond told me that her mom said, well, it can't be Brenda. One, she would have never gone that far from home, all the way out to King and Queen County, and 2, it didn't fit the time frame when the family had last seen her, which was the day before Thanksgiving in 2000.
I guess what's unusual about this case, and it really speaks to just how sad things were at that time, is that she disappeared and Mom didn't report her missing until 2004. That's 4 years later. I mean, that kind of shows what kind of lifestyle that Mom believed Brenda was living.
Brenda had developed a cocaine habit and was doing some sex work, mostly for people she knew, to obtain money for that cocaine. But by all accounts of our interviews, she didn't typically just jump in cars with strangers.
Thanks for the beautiful cards. They made my evening complete. I went to sleep with a smile on my face. The second card was a sweet surprise and even more greatly appreciated than the first. First of all, I'm not much of a writer, but I guess I could bend the rules a little, so I should. I am here, of course, for breaking the rules of the honorable judge, not completing the rock program. I'm 33 years old with 3 girls that look just like me. I was a stylist for 13 years. It's been 3 years of ups and downs. I know it's time for ups. We're at the Mattaponi River in King and Queen County.
This is where my mom's body was found 22 years ago by a canoeist, right over here to the left side, and stuck in the beaver's dam. Skeleton remained fully dressed when the canoeist found her. And somebody just brought her all the way out here, an hour away from where she went missing, and just dumped her body in the water. This is my first time out here, and it's pretty hard. It's rough. It's been almost 10 years since I know this is where she was found at, and I couldn't muster up the courage to come out here.
This is Route 628 in King and Queen. What do you guys think? Do they drag her down the bank, or do they just toss her over, you think?
It's our opinion that if this is where she was put into the river, that she was likely, with the least expenditure of energy by the person who dumped her, would likely have just tossed her over the side of the bridge into the water. But it's documented that there had been several flooding events that had occurred in the recent months leading up to the discovery. We do have a belief that the person who dumped the body probably had some knowledge of that roadway in that area.
And the very last time I saw my daughter was when I went to the funeral home, and I had to look at her skeleton remains. And it was hard because you just had her in a plastic bag, all her bones. They weren't a symbol or anything, so. So that stays in my mind.
That's the way it was supposed to happen.
No. So that's the very last thing I remember my daughter seeing her remains.
One thing that struck me about this case is, and really hit me in the heart, is watching Diamond, her daughter, back out at the scene, staring upriver at the curve where her mom was entangled in a dam. And it's just something I'll never forget. She was trembling, she was shaking with and crying and emotional.
Whoever did this, come forward. If you know who did this, please just give us some more closure. My mom deserves it, my family deserves it, I deserve it. She didn't deserve she didn't deserve to die, and she didn't deserve for her body just to be thrown away like it's trash and just disposed of in a river.
We're almost 20 years later, and it's wearing on her, and she wants answers to this case, and hopefully we're able to help her.
At times I think about it and I feel like he was here and he disappeared and nobody knew about him.
Definitely one of the most brutal cases I think Richmond detectives have ever worked.
The body was found about half mile downriver. Somebody had picked up a boulder and just smashed it down on him. He was killed first and then had his head cut off. And somebody carried it a mile all the way up by the railroad tracks up on the footbridge and placed it there. Clearly, I think some kind of message of some kind.
One of the things in this case that stuck out to me is that Eddie's family did not know that he was living homeless in the Richmond area until he was murdered.
Please, if you will, take the time to help us, to help Eddie, to let us have an answer, and to help solve this for him so he doesn't die in vain. Please. For 3 months of the year, from October 30th to December 31st, 3 of us were the same age. That's Eddie when he was in school. He was good to talk to. 23 years ago, that Eddie was murdered, and this bridge I'd never been to. Ooh, this gives me the willies a wee bit. Do you know where his body was?
Tuesday morning, a pair of walkers hiking down this path found the head at the other end of this footbridge.
I'm a little shocked because we normally don't find severed heads in this area.
After an intensive search, Richmond police found the victim's body about 3/4 of a mile downriver. But the identity of the white man and the answers to other key questions remain unknown.
The victim is Henry Edward Northington, and people that were close to him called him Eddie. Eddie went to school down there in the Colonial Heights area. When he graduated, he eventually left to be a sailor in the United States Navy. When this happened, it was assumed that family members in the community thought this was a hate crime because Eddie was gay.
All of this would be so much different now. People look at people different now. He was gay. They wouldn't have thought that was bad. This crime would not have been, it would still not be sitting where it is if it happened today. It would have been handled a whole lot different because the public wouldn't have stood for it either.
To get to the root of this story, Mark Holmberg years ago went into the homeless camp and talked to some of these homeless folks that were there and learned a lot about Eddie's case.
It's one of the toughest homeless camps in Richmond, really remote, down here near Texas Beach.
So the speculation, at least as far as I'm concerned, was he was living at the barrels, this campground called the Tunnels of the Barrels. It's a big drainage tunnel. The body was found about half mile downriver. It had a massive crush wound on the side of his chest and abdomen, like somebody had picked up a boulder and just smashed it down on him. I had a suspect. I think the police had a suspect. And there's another homeless guy. And my last information was that right after the crime, he went to Seattle or the Seattle area.
At one point, they had checked on someone, and they had given me a couple names of people. They have gone even out of state to talk to people that were in prison. But, I guess through the grapevine in prison, and some people claim they do things, and when they did talk to them, the facts didn't line up. Why somebody wants to take credit for something like this that they didn't do, I don't know how credit helps, but I guess it's in their world.
Eddie Northington was 6'4". He was a big guy. Just physically moving somebody that large around to get them in position, all these other things, you'd think you would need at least more than one person helping, if not a group of people.
I know one thing that I wondered is how do they, what method do they use to behead him?
Even with training, it just takes a lot of effort and a lot of just physical labor, really, to do that, unless they're using something like, honestly, like a power tool or a hacksaw. Maybe you could get through it a lot faster, but you'd still think at least maybe 5 to 10 minutes and making a fair amount of noise.
Definitely one of the most brutal cases I think Richmond detectives have ever worked. And I'm saying that based on my 21 years here.
I could have never imagined in my lifetime something would have happened like this to anyone. And it's still hard to believe in after all these years that it happened to Eddie. None of those things. I just hope somebody helped. Somebody knows something. People saw something. I know they're scared. I was scared. That's why I didn't say stuff before, because I have family to protect. But at this point, everybody's, as things go on and years go on and people pass, I don't want to die not knowing, or not trying to help find out what happened to my brother. Neither does my sister. It's only Diane and I. We just need help. That's all I can say.
Detective Clarence Key from RPD. We're working the case of Randall Collins. And Randall was last seen at a club in downtown Richmond, and you haven't heard from him since.
He was reportedly going down to the club district down in the bottom, Canal Club, one of the clubs that he was last seen at. It's different accounts stating that he was seen leaving the club, standing outside of the club, along the canal walk that's close by the club. And there are some reports that he was seen possibly getting into a vehicle with a couple of males, and other than that, that's it.
I know in my heart that he wouldn't be away from his family this long without something seriously wrong. I just hope and pray you won't give up trying to find him.
At that time in his life, he had made a total change. I mean, actually, he had accepted God into his life, started to turn his life around, stopped drinking. And just this day, I don't know why, but he decided he gave us a call and said he wanted to go out. And for this to happen, it just shocked everybody.
Wednesday morning, dive teams discovered the body of an adult male along the bank of the canal at Dock and 20th Streets, moments before they had planned to resume the grim search of finding 24-year-old Randall Collins.
We had the cadaver dogs search along the canal, going up into the James, and nothing.
Randall's mom has passed.
Yes.
His grandma has passed.
Yes.
Ladies that he was close to.
Right, and I really sympathize with the family. I know it's a struggle, and they're holding out hope.
Man, it's hell. I'm sorry to use that, but I'm dealing with PTSD. I beat cancer, but I haven't still found my son, and it's really, I can't put it to words. It drains you. It takes everything from your soul, just knowing that there's no conclusion. I mean, I pray and hope the best, but not knowing it's horrible, man.
If you have any information involving this investigation, please contact the Richmond Police Department Major Crimes Unit.
Or you can call Reopen the Case at 833-RTCF-NVA or email us at tips@reopenthecase.org.
My mom would not have left my sister behind at all. She would not.
Annie Horn disappeared from her South Richmond home in January of 2001. The suspect they had, the person of interest, was her husband.
He was kind of like a jealous-hearted person, He didn't want nobody talking to her or doing things with her.
Annie's daughter and sisters obviously believe that she is no longer with us and do want to figure out exactly what happened.
She was a loving sister, she was a hard worker. Yeah, and everybody loved her. She was a people's person. Yeah. And she most definitely loved her family.
She was fantastic. She was awesome. She loved to cook. She loved to keep her house up, the yard.
It's terrible. Not knowing it's the hardest thing we had to do. But we just asked the Lord to give us strength. Because we know she didn't just up and leave like that.
Annie Horn disappeared from her South Richmond home in January of 2001. Annie was a secretary for an insurance company. She was never known to miss work, so when she didn't show up, people that knew her knew something was wrong.
I think I found out like a week later, because I had already moved back to North Carolina. Last I talked to her was on January the 8th. And I told her to tell her husband and my niece happy birthday, and she's like, okay, I'll tell them. And that was the last time I talked to her.
We found out that her coat was definitely in the kitchen on the chair at the table. Her glasses, she wore prescription glasses, and the glasses were there on the table. So these are the things, essential things that she would need, and during that time of the year, she didn't have it. So she wouldn't leave without having those things with her.
My sister at the time was 9 years old. My mom would not have left my sister behind at all. She would not.
Annie was well loved in her South Richmond community. In fact, we caught up with a guy whose mom was good friends with Annie, and he reminisced about last seeing Annie.
Oh, she was a loving person, really did a lot for you. I think somebody murdered her. I really do. They point at her husband, her ex-husband, or husband, I think. Thomas, I believe is his name.
Speaking to the cold case detectives from Richmond, Annie Horn's death is presumed a murder, and the suspect they had, the person of interest, was her husband. And since Annie's husband's death, Richmond detectives say they believe he was linked to at least 4 other homicide cases, and they have cleared those cases. Really, RPD detectives are telling us that Annie's husband was a serial killer.
Well, Thomas just come over when we worked on cars together. I don't know, he was kind of like a jealous-hearted person, He didn't want nobody talking to her or doing things with her. Every time Thomas get to drinking, his mouth get to going, and he didn't like her to get to drinking. And
going back to when it happened and me and my brothers had came up here or whatnot, the husband, he just wasn't acting right. It was just lies after lies after lies. He would tell the family something, then he'll tell the detectives another thing. Like, it was just constant lies.
So police took us to a spot at the end of Annie Street.
Well, initially, we really concentrated on this area, especially in and around the home. One in particular at the end of the street was the old Bell Mead Apartments, which during that time period they were closed down. So it's a large set of apartments. So what we did with our search and rescue dogs that came in and assisted us from Northern Virginia, it took like 3 days, but we went over that whole set of apartments and all the side streets in and around and all the wooded areas. So we searched all around this area.
Richmond Cold Case Detective George Wade and Clarence Keys, missing persons detective, have kind of been working together on this case. The family tells us they've been very involved as of late, and even going down to North Carolina to visit with the family and take some DNA swabs in case they do come across Annie's remains.
By you all, with the reopening of the case, and we appreciate all the hard work you all are doing, we did get some calls that came in, and we ended up going down to Goldsboro.
Along with their forensics investigator went also with us, Kendall Barlow. And we examined what they had down there, and we took dental records and everything down there, and which didn't actually match up. And we got DNA from the family, which did match up to the bones. But as far as the reconstruction of the skull that was found down there, the image that was actually presented to us was very, very similar to the image of Annie.
my mom was always worried about if they're gonna find her or not find her. I couldn't tell you that, you know.
Has your mom passed since?
And she's been gone the same year Annie died in, 2001, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, not far behind. Mom died with cancer, and Annie, you know, them two together like peas in a pod, you know.
And you're talking 21 years ago, and we've stayed in contact with the family off and on, and just trying to follow up on any and everything that we possibly could follow up on. And what we want mostly for the family is closure, and I know that's what they want.
No, I feel like everybody is working and doing their part, but one thing I wish the community back then would step up and just say something if they knew something.
They too believe that Annie's husband was involved, but they want it definitively on the books to say that. Obviously, detectives are beating the bushes, asking folks that knew Annie's husband to come forward if they have information about what may have happened to Annie Horn back in January of 2001.
We're praying that she's still alive and that someday she'll come back.
It was April 30th, 2010. Ariana Peaches Davis disappeared.
It's devastating, you know, to go every day, wondering where your child is or is she okay when you can't get to her.
Prime suspect of this case, Tijuan Holland, was last seen actually around the house of Miss Davis. And he was last seen pulling out of the driveway and heading possibly in the direction of that Express Mart.
Henrico police believe Tijuan Holland is connected to 3 violent crimes.
His DNA hit that 2007 murder.
My son said hi to him and he pulled off. I'm like, well, what was he doing here?
So Tijuan's brother tells investigators he knows what happens to Ariana Peaches Davis.
Ariana was just a pleasant person to be around. She was the laughter in our family. She kept us happy. I miss her hugs, her smile, her energy, her love she brought to the family. I just miss holding her.
It was April 30th, 2010. Ariana Peaches Davis disappeared.
Her brother came home and I was in the room, sleeping. Peaches was upstairs when I thought, she was before I fell asleep. And her brother came in and he was like, well, Mom, where's Peaches?
Police believe Ariana was going a few blocks over to a convenience store. However, she left her personal things like her wallet at home, so things weren't adding up. In 2017, Mom tells me that Henrico police came by with a DVD. And of course, they showed the DVD to the family. At first, only Lawrence could watch it because Xandra was having a hard time with it. And Lawrence said it was then they learned about the Tijuan Holland connection to this case.
The prime suspect of this case, Tijuan Holland, was last seen actually around the house of Miss Davis. And he was last seen pulling out of the driveway and heading possibly in the direction of that Express Mart.
So Tijuan Holland dated a relative of Ariana's. They had broken up, but the day that Ariana disappeared, her brother said he saw Tijuan parked in the driveway. And when he went out to say hi, he kind of rolled the window up fast and pulled off without him acknowledging him. Henrico police believe Tijuan Holland is connected to 3 violent crimes.
Mr. Holland was convicted for a vicious attack on a young lady, wherein during the course of this attack, the young lady was stabbed numerous times in what the Commonwealth argued was an attempt to kill her. She was placed in a bathtub where she was going to be either left for dead and or he was going to, finish her off there. And by a miracle of miracles, that young lady was able to free herself from the situation when Mr. Holland had left the apartment and was able to get help.
And when he was arrested, a DNA swab was taken from him. His DNA hit that 2007 murder.
So Tijuan's brother tells investigators he knows what happens to Ariana Peaches Davis because his brother mentioned something about a dumpster and putting her body in the dumpster and those remains would be in a landfill.
Ariana Peaches Davis is still missing without a trace.
We praying that she's still alive and that someday she'll come back.
It's devastating, to go every day, wondering where your child is or is she okay. When you can't get to her, to comfort her, or to tell her that you love her.
We have no evidence to suggest that she is still alive. We've never received any information that she has been spotted anywhere else, which is sometimes what you see in some of these missing persons cases, particularly for young people who have been abducted and they come back out. We find them 10, 20 years later. We have no evidence that such has happened to Miss Davis. So we have been working with the family to let them know that we are treating this as a homicide and continue to treat it as one of our open cases.
To see Mom's face and to see her cry like she did when I walked into the house, it would mean a lot if someone could step forward and put the final piece of the puzzle together so police can do their job and bring charges against whoever killed Ariana Peaches Davis.
I pray that God speak to someone's heart to speak out. I miss her like crazy. She's my baby.